Welcome to MrCrimeCast, where we uncover the dark and twisted truths behind the world's most shocking cases. Imagine a spiritual movement that promises enlightenment, healing, and divine wisdom. Now, imagine that same movement ending with its leader's mummified body, wrapped in Christmas lights, her eyes missing, and her followers under arrest. This is the story of Love Has Won, a group that started as a New Age movement, but ended in deception, abuse, and death. And at the center of it all, a woman known as Mother God. How did a once ordinary woman convince people she was a divine being? And how did it all unravel into a bizarre crime scene straight out of a horror movie? Stay with me, because this is a case that will leave you haunted. Amy Carlson's journey from an ordinary woman to a self-proclaimed deity didn't happen overnight. Born on November 30th, 1975, in McPherson, Kansas, she grew up in a typical middle-class home with no obvious ties to extremist beliefs. She was bright, creative, and drawn to mythology and fantasy. But those who knew her also noticed a deep dissatisfaction with everyday life. As an adult, Carlson worked a series of jobs, including managing a McDonald's. She married young, had children, and followed a fairly conventional path. But underneath, there was always a feeling that she was meant for something greater. Family members later recalled that she longed for a sense of purpose, often expressing the belief that she had a special role in the world, even before she found spirituality. In the early 2000s, Carlson immersed herself in New Age spirituality and online forums, drawn to ideas about ascension, cosmic energy, and higher dimensions. She absorbed theories about reincarnation, alien beings, and spiritual awakenings. And over time, these beliefs became deeply personal. By 2006, she had convinced herself that she was not just a spiritual seeker, but a divine being. She started telling people that she had lived multiple past lives as figures like Jesus, Cleopatra, and Marilyn Monroe. She described herself as the only true spiritual leader on Earth, sent to guide humanity through an evolutionary shift into the fifth dimension. At first, her teachings were relatively harmless, attracting followers who were disillusioned with modern life and looking for answers. But as her sense of self-importance grew, so did her need for control. By 2010, her movement had taken shape, eventually becoming known as Love Has Won. No longer just a spiritual leader, Carlson now claimed she was Mother God, the physical embodiment of divine energy on Earth. At its core, Love Has Won promised spiritual enlightenment, healing, and guidance. Through social media, live streams, and online forums, Carlson attracted people who were searching for meaning. For many, the group seemed like a welcoming community, a place to find connection and purpose. But once inside, followers found themselves drawn into a system of control that grew more extreme over time. Carlson was not just their leader. She was an all-powerful deity. Her word was absolute law. Those who followed her were expected to devote their lives entirely to her mission. She told them that she was the only person who could communicate with the Galactic Federation, a council of higher dimensional beings guiding humanity. She claimed that questioning her authority was a betrayal, one that could delay humanity's ascension. Over time, she demanded more and more from her followers. They were expected to cut ties with family and friends, give up their money and possessions, and devote every aspect of their lives to her teachings. As her control tightened, Carlson's behavior became more erratic. She frequently drank alcohol, sometimes appearing heavily intoxicated on live streams. Her messages, once about love and healing, turned into angry rants, where she berated her followers, calling them weak or unworthy. Within Love Has Won, punishments became a regular part of life. If someone disobeyed, they were humiliated publicly, denied food, or forced to endure hours of verbal abuse. Sleep deprivation was common. Followers reported getting only a few hours of rest each night. As Carlson claimed, sleep was unnecessary for those who were truly enlightened. Despite this mistreatment, many remained devoted. They believed that Mother God was suffering for them, absorbing the negativity of the world to bring about spiritual transformation. By the mid-2010s, Love Has Won was no longer just an online movement. It had become a full-fledged cult. And as Carlson's grip over her followers strengthened, her paranoia deepened. She was convinced that outside forces were trying to destroy her. She spoke of government agencies watching her, of evil beings trying to attack her mission. She claimed that only her most loyal followers could protect her. The group had become isolated and insular, and for those inside, there was no easy way out. Then, in 2020, Love Has Won stepped into the public eye in a way that would change everything. The group relocated to Hawaii, hoping to expand their movement and attract new followers. Carlson believed the island held special spiritual energy, a place where she could continue her divine mission, but almost immediately, the group's presence led to massive public outrage. Carlson made the controversial claim that she was the Hawaiian goddess Pele, a declaration that deeply offended and angered native Hawaiians. To them, Pele was a sacred deity, one not to be claimed by an outsider. As word spread, protests erupted outside their home. Locals gathered, demanding that Love Has Won leave the island immediately. Some threw stones at their house, while others shouted threats. The situation grew increasingly hostile. Then one night, their home was set on fire. With tensions reaching a breaking point, Hawaiian authorities stepped in. Kauai's mayor, Derek Kawakami, worked with police to escort the group off the island, citing safety concerns. Carlson and her followers were forced onto a plane back to the mainland. The Hawaii incident changed everything. For the first time, Love Has Won was facing intense public scrutiny. Media outlets started investigating the group, uncovering shocking allegations of abuse, coercion, and fraud. But inside the cult, something even more alarming was happening. Carlson's health was rapidly deteriorating. She was frail, incoherent, and barely able to move. Her skin had turned grayish-blue, a clear sign of colloidal silver poisoning. She was so weak that she needed help walking. Yet, instead of taking her to a hospital, her followers insisted that she was shedding her human form, preparing for ascension. She spent most of her time hidden away in a dark room, unable to eat or move without assistance. For years, she had preached about a great spiritual event, a moment where she would lead humanity into a new dimension. Her followers believed that moment was imminent. But in reality, Carlson was not ascending. She was dying. And soon, her followers would be left with a grim reality they were not prepared for. By early 2021, Amy Carlson was in critical condition. She was frail, barely able to speak, and no longer mobile. Her body showed clear signs of malnutrition, and her once blonde hair had thinned considerably. The bluish-gray tint to her skin, a result of colloidal silver poisoning, had worsened, making her unrecognizable from the woman she once was. Despite her alarming physical state, her followers refused to believe she was dying. Instead, they insisted that she was transcending her human form, preparing for her final ascension into the fifth dimension. Seeking medical care was never an option. Carlson had long taught that modern medicine was a tool of corruption, and followers believed that attempting to intervene would disrupt her divine transformation. As Carlson lay bedridden, Love Has Won continued to function as a financially exploitative operation. The cult had been profiting from its followers for years, encouraging them to donate everything they had in exchange for spiritual enlightenment. The group made money through various means: online healing sessions, charging people hundreds of dollars for guidance from Mother God, selling spiritual products, including essential oils, crystals, and colloidal silver, all marketed as miraculous cures. Live-streamed fundraisers, where followers were pressured to give up their savings, retirement funds, and even their homes as proof of their devotion. Many followers lost everything. They had nowhere else to go. They had severed ties with their families, handed over their finances, and committed their entire existence to Carlson's teachings. Then, at some point in April 2021, Amy Carlson died. But instead of notifying authorities, her followers made a bizarre and disturbing decision. They kept her body. Rather than acknowledging that their leader had passed, members of Love Has Won preserved her remains in what appeared to be a makeshift shrine. A former cult member, disturbed by what was happening, had tipped off authorities, leading to a police raid on April 28, 2021. When police entered the group's home in Moffat, Colorado, they found Carlson's mummified body positioned in a sleeping bag. She was covered in glitter and wrapped in Christmas lights. Her eyes were missing, and a pair of decorative sunglasses had been placed over her face. The smell of decomposition filled the house, suggesting that her body had been inside the home for a significant period before authorities arrived. Perhaps the most shocking detail? 2 young children, ages 13 and 2, were found living in the same house. 7 members of Love Has Won were arrested and charged with abuse of a corpse, child abuse, and false imprisonment. The discovery of Carlson's mummified body made national headlines. How had the group allowed their leader to waste away without intervention? Why had they preserved her remains for weeks? And most importantly, what exactly had caused her death? The official autopsy report, released in December 2021, determined that she had died from a combination of alcohol abuse, anorexia, and chronic ingestion of colloidal silver. Despite her claims that colloidal silver had healing properties, its prolonged use had poisoned her system, causing severe organ damage and the bluish-gray tint to her skin. There was no evidence of foul play. But many who had been inside Love Has Won believed that Carlson's inner circle was responsible in another way. Her followers had watched her deteriorate for months. They had seen her wasting away, unable to move or speak properly. They had heard her cry out in pain, yet, instead of helping, they encouraged her to keep consuming the very substance that was killing her. Some former members later admitted that Carlson had been kept confined to a bed in her final weeks, often in a dark room, isolated from most followers. She was paralyzed from the waist down, severely malnourished, and visibly dying. Yet her followers continued to claim she was ascending to a higher dimension. Even more disturbing, when her health reached a critical state, there was no effort to seek medical intervention. The cult had built a belief system where modern medicine was evil, and Carlson herself had long rejected hospitals and doctors. Was this a case of delusion-driven neglect? Or was there a more sinister motive at play? Some former members have suggested that her closest followers knew she was dying but chose to do nothing. If Carlson was gone, they stood to gain power, influence, and financial control over what remained of Love Has Won. Evidence showed that even after Carlson's death, donations continued flowing in, money was still being withdrawn from her personal accounts, and followers were still selling online healing sessions in her name. Police also discovered social media posts and donation requests from the group, claiming that Mother God was still guiding them, even though she had already been dead for weeks. The secrecy surrounding her death, the decision to keep her body, and the continued financial exploitation all raised serious ethical and legal concerns. Despite this, authorities struggled to build a case against any individual member. Since Carlson's death was ruled as self-inflicted due to long-term neglect and substance use, no homicide charges were filed. Ultimately, most of the child abuse and corpse abuse charges were dropped, and Carlson's followers walked free. But while the legal consequences were minimal, the cult itself was forever changed. With their leader gone, the group was left fractured and directionless. Some followers abandoned the movement altogether, finally seeing Love Has Won for what it was. But others? They refused to accept that Carlson was truly dead. For them, Mother God had not died, she had ascended. And even though Love Has Won had collapsed, her most devoted followers were determined to keep her legacy alive. Her physical body may have failed, but they believed she was still guiding them spiritually. Rather than dissolving, the group splintered. One of the most prominent offshoots was 5D Full Disclosure, a rebranded version of Love Has Won led by former members. The group continued to spread Carlson's teachings, maintaining that she was still watching over them. Other small factions emerged as well, each carrying on different interpretations of her doctrine. Some believed that Carlson would return, while others insisted that her mission on Earth had been completed. Even after her body was found rotting in a shrine, these followers remained loyal. Meanwhile, former members who had escaped the group struggled to rebuild their lives. Many were left financially ruined, having given up their savings, homes, and careers to support the cult. Others suffered from severe psychological trauma, battling PTSD, anxiety, and lingering guilt over their devotion to Carlson. Some described years of emotional abuse, starvation, and exhaustion, recalling how they had been broken down to the point where they truly believed Carlson was a divine being. For them, leaving Love Has Won didn't mean immediate recovery. It meant trying to undo years of manipulation and control. In November 2023, HBO released a 3-part documentary titled Love Has Won: The Cult of Mother God. The series featured exclusive interviews with former followers, providing chilling first-hand accounts of manipulation, exploitation, and abuse. It included never-before-seen footage of Carlson's final days, showing her frail, confused, and dying, while her followers continued to worship her and ignore her suffering. The documentary reignited public interest in the case, bringing Love Has Won back into the spotlight. Many who watched it were left with unanswered questions. Could Carlson's death have been prevented if someone had intervened sooner? Should her inner circle have been held legally responsible for neglecting her in her final days? How do manipulative leaders like Carlson manage to gain such total control over people's lives? Even with the group largely disbanded, Carlson's teachings still exist online, and her most devoted followers continue to recruit new believers under different names. Her influence may have faded, but the damage she caused remains. The rise and fall of Love Has Won is a modern cautionary tale, one that highlights the dangers of unchecked devotion, coercive control, and spiritual exploitation. The story of Love Has Won is a reminder of how charismatic leaders can manipulate, exploit, and destroy lives, all under the guise of spiritual enlightenment. It raises difficult questions like, how can people recognize the warning signs of a manipulative leader? What legal protections should exist to prevent groups like this from exploiting vulnerable people? How do we help former cult members recover from years of indoctrination? Cults like Love Has Won thrive because they prey on people searching for meaning, healing, and hope. They offer answers, but at a devastating cost. That's it for today's episode of MrCrimeCast. What do you think? Was Love Has Won just another misguided spiritual movement? Or was it something far more dangerous? Let's keep the conversation going. Find us on social media and share your thoughts. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the darkest corners of true crime. Until next time, stay sharp, stay skeptical, and stay safe.